And joining us now is Akede, our lead correspondent in News Central, who was on the ground in Eruku reporting this tragic incident. Bernard, thank you for being here. And, of course, we want to hear firsthand. It was such an emotional video for me to watch. I still have tears in my eyes. And just tell us, what was the first thing you saw when you got to Eruku?
Thank you for having me. I also have kind of nostalgia watching that video myself and goosebumps all over my the first thing we noticed when we got there, as a matter of fact, while getting there was, and that's what you saw towards the end of that report, the state of the road, which honestly put all of us in fear. It's a long stretch of road. From Ilorin, the state capital, to Eruku, shouldn't be more than 2.5 hours. But it took us 4 hours to get there. Lined by bushes on the left and on the right. You would get quite scared, especially when it gets lonely. Sometimes there's almost no vehicles in sight for several kilometers ahead and behind. And then we got to spots where the road was pretty bad, really bad. So you come to a complete halt to navigate your way through. At some point, our vehicle broke down. At 2 points, actually, our vehicle broke down and we got into panic, because we were literally sitting ducks, as they say in English. But besides that, on getting into the village, we could sense fear in the atmosphere. It was quiet. We drove in and people were looking at us, knowing that we're strangers, wondering who we were, what we have come for. Of course, because of the incident that took place about 2 or 3 days just before we got there. So to answer your question, fear was the first sense, the first feeling that we could sense when we got in.
Right. So if fear was the first thing you sensed, I'm believing that is exactly how the survivors and the families were feeling. But I'm sure it's not everything you were able to put in the camera. What were the feelings? How were the families coping right after, this happened? What did they say to you?
They were in a state of confusion and panic, to be honest. If you notice, the first people we interviewed, the pastor and then the elder in the church, at some point, I had to ask them to please speak louder, but that was the maximum volume they could get out of their voices. The pastor himself said his first son was kidnapped at that time. So there are times when he was speaking, we could hardly hear him, of course, because of the trauma he was going through. There were people around who, they just see us knowing that we were journalists, because I was putting on the News Central shirt, the branded shirt. So knowing we were journalists, people would just at random run to us and begin to cry. They just begin to cry. In Yoruba, they were saying, just asking, please have mercy on us. Please help us. Please help us. Our family members are in the bushes. We don't know what has become of them. It was a state of confusion and fear. And we got into the church. It was an active crime scene, so everything was left the way it was, as though the attack just happened freshly. So we could still see bullet holes, we could see shattered windows, we could see doors that have been knocked down, and of course we could see the blood stains all across the church. They left it like that, locked the church until we came and asked to see the scene itself. So it was. Not like you clearly stated, not everything could be unpacked into this video. As a matter of fact, it took us quite a while to chop the video down to what you just saw, because it was so long and so many people were coming to us for help, saying we should please get their story out there so that their family members could be brought back safely and alive.
Now, Bernard, you got there about 3 days after this incident happened. And you were privy to see the blood on the floor, the gunshot marks on the, the windows and on the chairs. What security lapses or failure did you notice? Because this is supposed to be a crime scene, meaning it's supposed to be, covered away from public eye, but you had access and this happened 3 days after. So what did you notice about the security there?
Well, we were granted access because we had called earlier to say we're journalists, we're trying to do, an elaborate story on the place. When we got there, it was under lock and key. They only opened it for us to get in. That's the church building itself. Okay. But the surroundings, you could tell. The village is surrounded by bushes. There are farms, there are farmlands. The people there, majority of them are farmlands spread around the surroundings of the villages. So it's covered by bushes, which means it'll be difficult to actually monitor what's going on, inside of those bushes, particularly from a distance. And I think that's the first, sign of insecurity that we could see. Besides, of course, the state of the road, which means still tied to the bush as well, which means that if you have bandits in any of those bushes, they could easily be hiding in there and then lay ambush on vehicles or travelers. They come because the roads are really, really bad. So I think those two put together were the basic issues concerning security. When we spoke to the traditional head, the KBC, the first thing he asked for was security. He said he was pleading to the government to provide more security for the people of that particular village, knowing that it's a border town, bordering, I think, Kogi State, if I'm not mistaken, and you have vehicles traveling through that town, heading into Ilorin and other parts of the country. So they basically were asking for better security, tighter security in that particular place. And I'll wrap this question by saying that they also did mention that it's not the first time that they've experienced kidnappings, particularly along the road, again, because of the state of the road. But for the case that they saw going into the church, abducting 38 and killing 3, it was a different level.
Right. You just kind of opened my next question because, of course, we've mentioned this road, and looking at the video, it's going to be really unbearable having to pass through that road. And of course, the Oba mentioned that, they've had pockets of kidnapping here and there, but this was just, beyond unbelievable and happening in a religious setting. What can you tell us about this particular attack and how it was executed? Do you think it was a coordinated abduction?
Well, I do think so. When we spoke to the pastor the second day after we arrived, he explained that while the service was ongoing, they started hearing the gunshots. So it's not like the bandits were shooting from afar so that the people could make away, could run away before they get there. They had gotten close to the church already, and the church is at the edge. It's at the edge of the bushes, the church premises. So they had gotten close to the church already before they started shooting. He mentioned that one of the people who unfortunately lost his life was trying to escape, jump over the church fence, and then he was gunned down by one of the assailants who apparently was on a tree. So they had positioned themselves in certain places. There were some, or maybe at least one on a tree, targeting those who were coming out, and then others who went into the church to pack the belongings of the people and lay ambush on them, while some others stationed themselves outside. And then when they got the number of people they wanted, they led them out of the church, crossed the fence into the bushes, and walked kilometers away. So it was something that it looked like something that had been planned, properly staged, and then executed. They took those who they wanted to take. Whether they wanted to kill people or not, we cannot exactly determine, because the first person, as we heard, that they killed was the church's security, the vigilante, the Olode, as they call him. He tried to engage them from behind, and then they turned on him and gunned him down. A lot of the blood you saw there was his. He was dragged out from inside the church and then eventually executed outside the church there at the spot we saw. The second person was the one who ran away, jumped the fence, and then one of the bandits on the tree shot him and killed him, as we were told. And then the third one was part of the 39 people who were initially abducted. But according to them, they said he was making a lot of noise, while they were going, and then they just pulled him aside in the bushes and shot him there, leading to three dead and then 38 eventually abducted. So again, yes, it did look like it was something that was properly planned and then executed.
Now, back to what I asked earlier. I know I asked about security and how you had access to the church. And you mentioned that, they gave you access because you'd called prior, that you're a journalist and all. But what is their role in all this? Were they able to tell you how they are, trying to keep the community safe? And where were they when this happened? Were they off duty when this happened in the church?
Well, the security that I talked about was just the local security for the church. One person, as a matter of fact, they call them Olode, in Yoruba language. That's local security with their Dane guns. That's basically their job. He was on duty right there, and he did try, as they mentioned, as they told me, to engage the assailants. Those seeing his audacity with just one gun, being one man, and took him out quite easily. But besides that, as at the time we got there, security operatives had moved into the community. We could see army patrol vans moving around and soldiers, equally moving around. There was an armored police truck that was also on surveillance and moving around the community. As a matter of fact, if you remember in the report, there was a part where I said we had to run from inside the bushes back to the community where we heard some heavy gunfire We weren't sure who was shooting, but later we were told that it was the soldiers who had equally gone into the bushes. We don't know why they shot, possibly warning shots, or maybe they saw something or heard something, and maybe they engaged some people. We have no idea. But it was just a sign to show us that more security had come into the community, which again, the KBAC did plead for. He had seen the signs, but he was hoping that they would stay longer and that there will be more presence of security operatives besides just their own local security, or all of them, like you call them. And also to quickly state here that as at the time we did get there, we began to see that more people in the community, particularly the men, had begun to take up arms, their own local Dane guns. They said that they would take it upon themselves to protect themselves as well, whether or not they get security support from the government, that they would protect themselves. So we could see from time to time and from place to place, young men, old men carrying those kind of Dane guns that you saw at different positions. We spent the night in the community as well. Throughout the night, there were some people who didn't sleep. They were moving, patrolling, some in the bushes, some within the community with those Dane guns, just ensuring that they can provide as much security as they possibly can to their loved ones in the community.
Wow, Bernard, it was brave of you to go all the way to the report. And with that, I say thank you on behalf of your colleagues here. It was really brave for you to go. It was so heartbreaking watching that video. And I can only imagine how you felt having to feel the fear of the community and having to sleep there the next day just to let the world know what's happening. So, Bernard, thank you for joining us on Breakfast Extra and giving us this report. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And I would also like to say thank you to the camera operator as well, Thomas Tille. I didn't do it alone. Thomas and I were there. Thomas ran faster than I did. So I'd like to say thank you to Thomas.
Thomas, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Now, this story reminds us of the harsh realities of insecurity in Nigeria and the importance of reporting from the front lines to hold systems accountable.